Well, most other presidents have taken the position that the media is difficult to deal with, that it's always asking probing and difficult questions, but they haven't questioned very much the importance of the role of the media, which is built right into the American Constitution. There's a reason the First Amendment is first. It was designed by the founders that the media would be built in as another check on government, one that was outside the government's control. President Trump is clearly uncomfortable with that. He views the media as something that's got to get along on his team, and if it isn't on his team, he does what he traditionally did when he was in the real estate business, which is run down the other side, describe them as failing. How many times have you heard him say, the failing New York Times? The truth of the matter is, there are many reasons the New York Times is not failing, a good digital strategy, terrific content, but another one of the reasons it's not failing is people constantly are interested in reading the truth about Donald Trump. So in many ways, every time that he steps out and calls the media failing or calls the New York Times failing, our subscriptions go up. It's sort of a remarkable thing. But there is something corrosive here because past presidents have usually taken the view that while they disliked the news coverage they got, they would argue that much of it was unfair, that people didn't understand them. They never fundamentally questioned the central role that the press played in keeping the government in check. President Trump is the first president to question whether or not we want that role and to turn his supporters against a free press. Well, this is a really interesting question, which is his attack on the media, in the end, making him more popular or less popular? And I think the answer is a complicated one. It makes him more popular with his base. And his political base is something between 32 and 38% of the US population. It's making him far less popular with those who oppose him and who believe that his secret desire here is to be an all-powerful, singular leader, and therefore a leader who could control the media. The big question is, how does his attack on the media play with independents, a group that he won in significant numbers, surprisingly large numbers, in the 2016 election, but who presumably have grown tired of the tweets, tired of the constant soap opera of the Trump presidency, and perhaps, though not all of them, tired of the way he deals with the press with such contempt. Now, there's a second part of this as well. Contempt flows down. So previous governments, even if they didn't like the questions that we asked at the New York Times or that other media did, they would answer them. Frequently now we find that the government's position is that they simply won't answer them. They'll say nothing on something important and sensitive, even a national security matter. And then, of course, they'll be outraged when the story runs, and we will come back and say, but we gave you an opportunity to talk for this, and you declined. They don't want to hear it. So. Sure. So I think initially people thought that cyber weapons were just another weapon. You know, we have guns, tanks, airplanes, missiles, nuclear weapons. Cyber's just another bullet in the arsenal. I think in the past few years, as the utility of cyber weapons has become so much broader, there has begun to be the dawning understanding in the United States that something else is going on here, that cyber is really the great leveler, that it allows small states like North Korea or Iran that could never take on the United States or larger European powers directly, to try to undercut them with short of war kind of actions, whether that is freezing up their banks, using WannaCry, the virus that attacked the British healthcare system, attacking a steel plant in Germany, or Sony Pictures in the United States because North Korea didn't like a movie they were going to release that envisioned the assassination of Kim Jong-un. So the thing about cyber is that you can dial it up and you can dial it down in a way most weapons can't be. So you can calibrate the attack to try to undercut institutions as well as just cut off electricity and so forth. So we think about it now, particularly after the 2016 election, quite differently than we did. I recently completed a book called The Perfect Weapon: War, Sabotage, and Fear in the Cyber Age. And one of the central arguments for it is that this is as fundamental a change in the way states undercut each other, compete with each other, as the invention of the airplane was. And an example of this is in 1909, the Wright brothers brought out their first military flyer. It was a military version of their airplane. They flew it around for some generals up at a big field in College Park, Maryland, and the generals looked at it and they said, wow, this is great. We can fly over enemy lines, we can see where their vulnerabilities are, and then we'll just send in the cavalry. They never imagined that you might arm the airplane, or that 35 years later someone might actually drop an atomic bomb using the airplane, because the atomic bomb hadn't been invented. We're at about the same place with cyber. We're at about the end of World War I. We're only now beginning to understand that this is an incredibly powerful weapon, but we don't understand how it is an incredibly powerful weapon. And that's what we're just now learning.